Now, as promised, I bring in more of our experts. New York Times columnist Michelle Goldberg, Daniella Gibbs Leger of the Center for American Progress, and John Flannery, prosecutor, back with us. Danielle, in Washington, your view on what we learned today and where we're headed. And I should mention, we're keeping a close eye on the cameras, so we will cut in and out if we get news.
You know, I think today's hearings, for folks who wanted pizzazz, you definitely got a lot of that today. I think the three witnesses from the Democratic side were very compelling in making the case that the president has indeed committed impeachable offenses. And I think they reiterated that over and over again. And what you saw from the Republican questioning was a lot of flailing, a lot of going back to debunked theories about what is happening. And I think it was really overall a positive day for Democrats. Like I said, they made a good case for why the president should be impeached. I think what you said, also saw from
let me jump in and ask you, you said going back to theories, conspiracy theories, but also literally going back to Ukraine today. You couldn't script this in a movie.
I don't understand. What is wrong with Rudy Giuliani? How is he actually in Ukraine, possibly doing the criming that we are discussing at this very moment?
Yeah, and let me read it again, because this is the kind of thing where people might say, okay, is that old news? Are you referencing? No, this is new news. This is new action. We showed the photo of him on the way there. I'm reading from the New York Times here. Giuliani facing scrutiny, travels to Europe to interview Ukrainians, meeting in Budapest Tuesday as the report came out with this former Ukrainian prosecutor, Lutsenko. Daniella.
Yeah, it is, again, these folks are so brazen about what they are doing, they don't even feel like they have to hide it at all. And that emanates from the top. And so I think what you also heard today was we are at a very important inflection point. And again, if this behavior isn't impeachable, what is? And what message would you send to the next president, be it a Democrat or Republican, if you don't impeach this president over what he has done?
Michelle.
So I thought Jonathan Turley, the Republican witness, his bad faith was, absolutely staggering. The difference between what he said during the Clinton impeachment and what he's saying now. The piece that he wrote in 2014 saying you don't actually need a crime for impeachment. Now he's saying that Trump's actions don't meet the federal statutes for bribery. That said, he kept saying over and over again that he thought there was more facts to be developed and there's more of a case to be made. Again, I think this is a bad faith argument, given that these people have refused their subpoenas and they've obstructed this investigation. But I also sort of think that Democrats should consider taking them up on their offer, right? You want more witnesses, you want more investigation. I think there are more witnesses and more investigation that they could credibly do, particularly since the Senate under Mitch McConnell is not going to run a fair trial. I think they could take a little more time before they turn this over to him. Say you want more witnesses? Let's call Lev Parnas, who apparently is eager to testify and who was in the middle of this whole plot.
To your point, you could take this New York Times report on Giuliani pushing the plot this week and staple it to the back of the intelligence report.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and find out, there's the SDNY investigation into Giuliani's two henchmen. They've accumulated a lot of information, a lot of recordings, data that there's currently wrangling over when and if this will be turned over to impeachment investigators. I would like to know a lot more about those Giuliani calls to the Office of Management and Budget, because there is no earthly reason that the president's private lawyer has to be speaking to the Office of Management and Budget. And so I actually think that, if Democrats wanted to, kind of pull back a little bit and draw this out, now they have a perfect excuse to, because it was the Republican witness who was making the case that that's what they should do.
Right, an excuse, or many of them would argue a rationale, given what we're seeing. John, I want to play for you another exchange today, because obviously we're not going to try to do everything that happened. But in high points, there were clear exchanges where you saw something that I think Americans could benefit from, whether they're convinced or not. 70 million people watch part of the fact hearings. Now you're in the law hearings. And so you had the facts and the evidence as presented applied by experts, many of these people with tremendous credentials, and saying their view of what the law dictates. Take a look.
When you asked for private benefits in return for an official act, or somebody gave them to you to influence an official act, that was bribery.
And so we have constitutional bribery here, the high crime and misdemeanor of constitutional bribery against President Trump.
If you conclude that he asked for the investigation of Vice President Biden and his son for political reasons, that is to aid his reelection, then yes, you have bribery here.
What did you think of both that exchange specifically, John, and any others that you would point to for viewers, especially at the end of the day, people living their lives didn't see every moment? Is that important? Is that useful? And did you agree with the bulk of the analysis? My ear, and I was covering this as an expert guest as well as an anchor around here with everybody else on our team. My ear, I heard at least 3 cases for 3 articles of impeachment or more.
Yes, I thought that, well, they talked about abuse of power, they talked about bribery, they talked about obstruction. But the thing that I thought about that exchange that the questioner missed was that she was giving credence to a statutory bribery charge. She wasn't asking for any leeway on a description of bribery in some constitutional sense. She spoke about official acts, which is one of the elements in bribery that the Supreme Court was concerned with. And the official acts that were spelled out during the Intelligence Committee hearings were, 1, you want a meeting. 2, you'd like this $391 million to defend your nation against Putin, my friend, in Russia. And I think that Trump had hoped that he'd never have to give them any money at all. But finally, because the whistle was blown on him literally, it was forced by Congress that the funds should go for the country. Now, the questions, I thought, sometimes drifted, but the professors were amazing, I thought.
Who did you think was strongest?
Well, I liked Feldman particularly, and I think it was because he was the first to speak, as I remember. And I thought he was so clear. And in other words, for the public, he was giving the building blocks in a way that was undeniable. And I thought that was powerful. I thought the references to the 1787 meetings of our founding fathers as to why impeachment and what it meant and what the debate was and why they decided they couldn't do without it, particularly within the shadow of why they had declared their independence from a king-ridden country.
I want to bring Daniella in on that because it was the lofty part. I mentioned in our open here there was all the partisan brawling. There was plenty of doublespeak, as people have seen these hearings before. But I would argue as an observer that there was loftier at times than a lot of other congressional hearings. The founders got a lot of things wrong. They were cabined and blinkered by their times. They made many mistakes. I wonder what you thought of, Daniella, the loftier part where the founders, they did know something that remains so true today. Everything's changed. Technology's changed. Our minds have changed. But absolute power abused within a democracy to hold on to more power unchecked can endanger democracy itself.
Yeah, some things withstand a test of time. And abuse of power and not acting like a king or a monarch, no matter what century you're in, I think it all plays out the same way. And I agree. I think laying that out at the beginning really set a good grounding for what these hearings are about. Because at the end of the day, this is not a happy process. This is not a good thing that this country is going through. It is a sad, sad moment for us that we are actually possibly on the verge of impeaching another president for asking a foreign government to interfere in our elections. And, I just have to say, I don't know which congresswoman played the tape of President Trump actually saying that he did the thing that we're accusing him of doing. But I'm glad that they did that because it's almost as if the Republicans up there on that stage forgot that President Trump did this and that we heard him say these things.
That was powerful evidence, Michelle, and like some of the evidence presented, it's come from the president and his own people in public statements on Fox News and elsewhere. I've had very thoughtful conservative Federalist Society experts, Michelle, on who make the argument that if the president was pursuing a legitimate investigation, that would be a good defense. And I say to them, legally, that's true. But the problem is he already admitted that what he wanted was to go after his rivals.
Right. He already admitted that. And I can't remember who it was who made the point that if you really want to pursue a legitimate investigation, you don't go on CNN and announce it. Right. That's the opposite of what you do when you want to pursue a legitimate investigation. And then, of course, there are actual avenues that you use when you want another country to pursue an investigation. So they could make that argument, but you're right. I mean, both Trump and Mulvaney have already basically told us exactly what happened here. But, you know, speaking of the Federalist Society, I do think there was a missed opportunity on the part of the Democrats. These three witnesses were fantastic, but I think they could have had. There are plenty of Federalist Society law professors who also think that Donald Trump deserves to be impeached, right? They could have had a very conservative Federalist Society law professor making the case in conservative terms. And I think that, you know, I don't know that it's going to convince anyone out there, but I think it might have been a useful foil to some of the Republican insistence that this is a purely partisan process.
That's a great point. And one rejoinder is they may say, well, they have some additional potential hearings coming. But I do think also it was heavy on lawyers. We all get that. They could have had someone who's steeped in government, might not technically be a law professor, but knows about national security. Because one of the things that really did Nixon in was the abuse of the FBI, CIA powers. Those are tremendous and secret powers wielded in secret. If you could get away with that, game on, game off. And so the question there of whether you bring that in, of course, I think also we've heard from some of those people as fact witnesses. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.